Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the situation where a man drove a car through the front doors of a dealership. The reason I'm making this video is, well, a few reasons. So first off, this happened at a dealership that I've been filming with for over 6 years at this point. And, well, since it happened in Utah, I am pretty familiar with how the car business is run here in Utah. And so I think that gives me quite a bit of insight into the situation that a lot of people posting about this on social media just don't have. And so with that being said, let's get right into it. So to set the stage for the conversation on this topic, I want to quickly read a news article on what happened. This comes from Fox 13 News. They're a local news network here in Utah. They state that Michael Murray, 35 years old, bought a used as-is Subaru from Tim Daly Mazda Southtown, and after basically buying the car, leaving with it, he then came back and demanded a refund, stating that the car had a bunch of issues. And then after that whole situation, he then threatened to drive the car through the front of the dealership, and then he drove the car through the front of the dealership. Now, they actually have an interview with one of the managers, Tyler Slade, and what he states is that they offered the customer a few different options. They offered the customer his money back or to trade that car for another car that they have in their inventory that was a similar dollar figure. And he also states in this interview that they let the customer know before buying the car that this was a car that had issues. That is why they were selling it as is and were not selling it as a frontline car. And I want to talk more about that topic later on in the video. But what this states is that Murray was, after this whole situation, was booked, put into jail, and now he faces charges of felony criminal mischief and reckless endangerment, which, yeah, that doesn't sound good whatsoever. Now, before I give my 2 cents on this particular situation, I do want to mention that in closing, I'm going to talk about an interview that was done with Michael Murray, because I think that really shows you this, like, the summation of this whole situation, and it shows that people are massively overreacting on social media about this particular situation. So, my 2 cents. We need to first look at the particular car that this gentleman purchased. He purchased an as-is vehicle, and so let's talk about what that means in the scope of the car business. So, he purchased this vehicle at a new car dealership. New car dealerships have 3 different types of vehicles. They have new cars, right? They've never had an owner. They're brand new. They have full factory warranty, right? Those cars, you can expect them to be perfect because it is a new vehicle. Now, the next type of vehicle that a new car dealership is going to have are frontline ready used vehicles. These are vehicles that have had at least one previous owner, maybe multiple previous owners. They've got some miles on them, right? They've been used, but the dealership, after having that car traded into them, has had a mechanic inspect the vehicle, and if it's needed things to be fixed on it, they've fixed those, and then they've put it on the front line. And so it gets the distinction of being a used vehicle, but a retail used vehicle. Now, the third type are auction cars, is what I will call them, wholesale cars. Basically, these are cars that get traded into the dealership that either because of the condition that they're in, because of the miles they have, the value that they're at, it just doesn't make sense to sell them on the front line. And what you'll typically see this type of car to be is usually it's like 10, 15 plus years old, has 100, 200,000 miles on the odometer. And so the value of the car is so low that if the dealership put any money into reconditioning this car, they would be over the retail value of the car. And so the logical thing to do with these cars is to wholesale them, because if you took that car through the shop and put it on the front line, like, hey, here's this, again, in the case of this situation, the Subaru, here's the Subaru that's worth, I don't know how much that car sold for. Let's just say, here's a Subaru that retails for $3,000. We traded it in for $1,000, and we put $5,000 to fix it in the shop, and so we have to sell it for $6,000, right? Doesn't make any sort of logical sense. So wholesale, that is what this gentleman purchased. Now, again, if you look at the interview, the dealership was very explicit with this gentleman. They told him that he was buying a used wholesale car. This is not a retail piece. And this is something that's very common in the car industry. This is something that I dealt with when I sold cars. And so what this buying process looks like for the buyer is the buyer gets told like 50 times, you understand this car has no warranty. this car was inspected by our mechanics and we said that it's not good for retail, so you're kind of buying, like you're buying a clunker, right? So they're told a bunch of times that they're buying a clunker. And then on top of that, they have to sign legal forms that say that they're buying a clunker. And on top of that, with these legal forms, they're a little bit different than the retail forms. With the retail forms, let's say that you buy a retail used car and then you drive off the dealer lot and it blows up. There are some buyer protections for that. With a wholesale car, there are no buyer protection because again, it is a wholesale piece. And something that's important to note is because this car was purchased in person, it wasn't purchased through an auction, there really isn't any protection because it's like this person's had a chance to look at this car, they've had a chance to drive this car before they buy it. The only type of protection you usually see with wholesale cars is if someone buys a car from auction and the auction basically states, okay, let's say the car has no lights in the dash, but then the car comes in and it's lit up like a Christmas tree, then sometimes you can actually send that back. Sometimes you're just screwed. Like you just have to, you bought the car and you gotta keep it. So anyways, this gentleman bought a wholesale car and he signed a bunch of forms saying that he's buying a wholesale car. So he knew exactly what he was getting himself into. Now, him coming back and demanding a refund, legally, there is no refund for him because he's already signed all the forms, he's already paid for the car, like there is no refund. The dealership obviously offered him a refund, and so what that says to me is that this guy just kind of had something like a circuit or something break in his head, and then he just went bananas. So this now leads us into the interview section. So they interviewed Michael Murray, and what he basically says is, you know, kind of what we see in the article where he buys this used as his car, finds that it has some mechanical issues. The dealership told him it had mechanical issues before he bought it. But anyways, finds out it has mechanical issues and then goes to return the car. And then the dealership initially states that he's not going to be able to return it. Again, this is standard policy. He's buying it as his car. He's not buying a retail piece. There are no returns on as his cars. But anyways, he then gets extremely upset. And he says that like at this point, he just pretty much blacks out. And I think that this tracks when you look at the interview with the manager from the dealership, because the manager states that they then offered a refund when they don't have to offer a refund. And they also offered him to swap to a different car that was a similar amount of money if he wanted to, and he didn't take it, right? So I think he just kind of had like a mental break. And the other thing that leads me to think that this dude had a mental break is when you watch the video of him driving through the front doors of the dealership. It's really strange. So he drives through the front doors, and by the way, that Subaru is indestructible because it looks like it had no, like the doors get destroyed obviously in the front desk and everything, and then the Subaru looks like perfect, like perfectly fine. So maybe it's a good advertisement for Subaru. But anyways, he drives through, he slams the door, right? He swears, and then he does something really weird. He has like a jacket thing on, and he takes it off and he puts it on the roof of the car, and then he walks out. And then he walks back in. Now, I'm not sure if it's him saying this or someone else, but you can hear someone say, is there anyone underneath the car? And then you hear no, and then and this is why I think it's him saying it. He then picks up his jacket off the roof of the car and then walks out. Like it literally looks like something in his brain broke because he's doing, like, that's so random. Again, just try to put yourself in his shoes. If you just drove because you're angry, if you just drove through the front end of a dealership, why, like, the first thing you do is take off your jacket? Like, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And so I think he did. I think he genuinely had a mental break. But the thing is, he still committed a crime and he still put people in danger. Again, you look at the article and I think it was about 9 people that were in that area that had to jump out of the way. As it's hard to tell from the videos, right? But there were people around there and they had to jump out of the way as he drove this car through the front doors of the dealership. And so, like, it's like from SpongeBob. Don't do the crime if you're not willing to do the time. I remember that episode as a kid when they what was it? They steal the balloons or whatever. But this is obviously a lot more serious than a SpongeBob episode. But you guys get the point. Like he's going to have whatever time he's going to have to serve, he's going to have to serve. He's probably going to have to pay some fines as well. So it's like, that's just life. Like you play stupid games and you win stupid prizes. But anyways, let me you guys think about this whole situation. I think that, again, with what he said in the interview and with the dealership interviews, and him kind of admitting, like, again, at the end of the interview, he kind of admits, like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. it shows that all the people on social media saying that like, oh, this shows how bad dealerships are and everything. It's like, okay, yeah, there are definitely dealerships, and it's typically the buy here, pay here, used car lots that do really shady stuff. But in this particular situation, the dealership did everything that they were supposed to do, and they went above and beyond that, because again, they didn't have to offer any sort of refund to him. There's nothing legally that says, again, to my knowledge, from when I worked in the car business, there's nothing legally that says that you have to refund someone on an as-is purchase, because again, they're literally signing a form saying, I'm buying a piece of junk. This is my piece of junk now. It's no longer your piece of junk. So I don't know. That's just my personal take. Let me know what you guys think about this. I'll see you.